Welcome, and for many of you, welcome back to another episode of the Baschamania podcast. This is episode 25, and I am your host, Justin Bash. Today we have 2020 Olympic hopeful Joey McKenna stopping by, who just had an amazing tournament at the U.S. Open, finished as the runner-up to Jordan Oliver, who's also just lights out lately. If you haven't gone back and listened to Jordan Oliver's episode, as soon as you finish this one, you should go back and finish that one. But we've got a great conversation lined up with Joey, and this is no doubt going to be another great show. We're going to dive right into it. Before we do, go ahead and be sure to subscribe. Subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Anchor, wherever you listen to podcasts. We have so many more great guests coming up, so be sure to subscribe. And with that said, let's dive into the reason you're here, Joey McKenna.
It's Baschamania! Let me tell you something, brother. He gave us everything he had in him tonight. What you gonna do when Baschamania runs wild on you? Oh, it's gonna be a good one. And business just picked up here on the podcast. Oh, yeah.
Mr. Joey McKenna, how are you?
I'm good, Justin. How you doing?
I'm doing good, man. We keep running into each other for like the last year, everywhere from wrestling tournaments to Don's Beach House, you name it. And we never really get to just sit down and chat. So I'm pumped, especially after this weekend, to be able to do that.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, let's set the stage with a little bit of background. Let people get to know you a little bit more. So you were born in Jersey. Your youth and high school career is bananas. You went to Blair Academy, one of the best schools in the country. Tell me a little bit about getting started in wrestling and going to Blair Academy and what that was all like.
So obviously growing up in Jersey, I wrestled for this club called Pascack Hills. It was my first wrestling practice, first wrestling club ever. And, there were a lot of big names in the program. We had Mark Gray, Joey Recchio, Chris Villalonga, Frank Cagnina, Austin Ormsby, Brandon Rolnick, just names and names. If you're crazy about wrestling, then you probably recognize some of those.
Right.
But yeah, so we were always in kind of that wrestling mindset. And when I was getting into sixth and seventh grade, I started going up and training at Blair. And I started really getting the taste for that. Coach Buxton was the coach at the time, so I was able to be in a room with names like Kellen Russell, Jared Platt, and all these people. So I kind of started going and training there, and basically I wanted to go there. That's where I wanted to go, wanted to be, and I kind of knew that. So of course, like as any other middle school kind of kid would, I was looking at all those schools in Jersey, Blair, of course, Bergen Catholic, Del Barton. Those were all on the radar. But when it came down to it, because of that previous relationship with Buxton and just kind of going up there and training, I wanted to go to what was the best. I knew I kind of wanted to go to Blair and wanted to be around a national program. And that's exactly what I decided to do. Went to Blair and had some really good teammates up until that point. So I was exposed to high level wrestling, I feel like, at a young age, and I always yearned for it, which was, great. I loved my whole high school experience, had great teammates, got to wrestle really, really tough competition all throughout, and probably set the stage for the years to come.
And how did you continue to level up at such a young age? Like you did so much between Beast of the East, you won, Fargo, you won, like all these different things. How did you continue to level up and get better?
I think as I got older, as I started getting older, my career kind of started becoming my own. When you're young, you wrestle, your parents push you to wrestle, your coaches push you to wrestle, and we all wrestle because, we're all competitive at some point too, but I started really gaining a love for it, finding, practices became fun. I was learning new technique, and I just found that wrestling was a sport and a place where you could always just keep on getting better. And that's exactly what it was for me. So I always found that challenge. I think because I was around the high level guys and older guys, I always had people to look up to, people that were doing the highest level things. And I wanted to do that too.
And was there a bit of like experimenting and trying to see what you liked? Like, I know, for example, I'm curious, didn't you go Greco a few years at Fargo?
Yeah. I'm actually a 3-time Fargo champ, only in Greco. I never won it in,
So what
never
led to
won
that?
it in freestyle. I started wrestling freestyle and Greco when I was a schoolboy, first year schoolboy. My good friend and old coach of mine, John Gray Jr., brother of Mike Gray, very close with that family, actually. He called me up and asked me to go wrestle for the schoolboy team. So that's where my freestyle and Greco career started. And I went to this club in New Jersey, this freestyle Greco club called Eclipse. And I had a coach, Larry Levinstone. He had a Scooby-Doo tattoo on his calf. And I hope he hears this so he could hear this. But
for sure,
he was really into Greco, and he had a great personality, real funny guy. And when I was going to the schoolboy duels, I just really wanted to do well in Greco for him, you know, because of his love for it. He got me super excited. So I go to schoolboy duels and I go 1-7 in Greco. I won one match, I lost 7, my first Greco competition ever. I was so upset. And then freestyle came around. I went 7-1, total opposite. And I was like, man, I think this grabbing legs thing is for me. I don't know about this other stuff.
Right.
But, you know, it didn't deter me from wrestling both styles in New Jersey. And because of this club, they just kind of pushed us to wrestle both styles. And at that time, Greco was always before freestyle, too. So you just went early, you wrestled more matches, and it was fun. My second year schoolboy, I ended up winning the Triple Crown. I started seeing some success, and then first year cadet at Fargo, I ended up winning Greco and then not placing in freestyle. And I always just wrestled both styles. That's just kind of what you did. I feel like nowadays guys don't do that as much, especially at the younger ages. And I would say, if for any young guys listening, I'd wrestle both styles. I think it's good to develop things, develop different feels. It allowed me to get comfortable with upper body. I'm not saying I throw a ton, but if I do get in a situation, you know, I've been there before, and I'm not scared to go up there. So yeah, I started seeing that success. Won Fargo a few times, and in Greco, never in freestyle. Took runner-up twice, and but you know, when it came down to it, I always liked attacking legs, and I knew freestyle was going to be more the route that I was going to take. And yeah, here we are, years and years later.
And I do think it's so crucial. Like, you know, I think some people look at it like, if I'm not going to be a Greco star. And I get, like, as a fan, Greco's boring to watch, especially when you have freestyle. Like, Greco's not as entertaining. You kind of have to be a diehard I think, to enjoy it. Like, I love freestyle. I love folk style. Greco, for me, is hard as a fan to get into, and it's not a popular opinion. But I like your perspective, which is, especially at a young age, there's a lot of development there you can use it for. And you don't have to take that one path of, I want to be a freestyle Olympic champ, so all I'm going to do is freestyle. You know, like any guy you ask that's high level like you will say, like, listen, freestyle, folk style, it's all wrestling. And I think mixing in Greco helps.
Exactly. And that's what I say. Like, wrestling is wrestling. I mean, that's where I think I developed some pretty good parterre skills. You look at it, most of those Greco wrestlers are way better in parterre than us freestyle wrestlers. They spend time there. They need to be good there. Whereas us in freestyle, you know, we're really, I think, just as a nation too, we don't spend enough time in parterre. I think it could be a place where we can get better as freestyle wrestlers. And I think Greco definitely helped expose me to that. And just the comfort, even hand fighting. I mean, you watch these matches from the U.S. Open. These guys are in there battling for every single position. They're fighting, and that's important too. It's a different way of hand fighting, maybe, but you know those skills carry over. That's for sure.
Right. And speaking of development, so you go all over the place, you're training, you're doing awesome in high school, and then you make the decision to go to Stanford, and then you make the decision to go to Ohio State. What went into the decisions behind going to those schools?
Yeah. So again, back to Blair, a lot of those guys that were older than me, a lot of them were going to Ivy League schools. We all were put into that mindset to kind of use Blair to go to the best academic institution. And, you know, a lot of guys are following suit with that now. And luckily right now, I feel like these Ivy League programs are totally on the rise. I mean, Cornell has, of course, been a staple.
Totally.
Princeton's getting a lot better. I'm down at Penn now. We're getting a lot better. These programs are getting better because they offer these kids the chance to go get a high-level education and be able to wrestle at a high level collegiately. So we were all kind of in that mindset. And then I was looking at Stanford. A few of my older teammates at Blair had gone there, Evan Silver, Max Holbeck. So I'd gone out, taken a few visits, and then when it came down to it, I was looking at Penn, Princeton, Lehigh, and Stanford. And when I really thought about it, I was like, man, I've been wrestling for a long time. And I feel like when I was a kid, you know, I wanted to I wanted to go to a place where I could maybe get some type of athletic scholarship, where not to say I was being rewarded for my wrestling, but, you know, I kind of wanted to alleviate some of that stress. My parents have been supporting me all up until that point, you know, with every wrestling thing. And I kind of wanted to go out on a limb and do something on my own. So I chose Stanford. I thought it was a great place for me to go. Obviously, the education is top-notch, arguably number one in the world for undergraduate. And I chose to go. And, you know, I loved every bit of my 2 years there. I grew so much as a person. But, you know, there were just little things that eventually over time, I just kind of made me unhappy in being there. And when it came down to it, I really reflected on my life, and I realized that I'd made a lot of decisions in my life based on wrestling. You know, I chose to go to Blair because they were one of the number one teams in the country. You know, I went to Stanford on that kind of whim, so to speak. And I was like, man, you know, like wrestling's really made me happy in my life. And, you know, like it's what I love. It's my passion. It's my passion at the moment. And I really feel like I got to pursue that. So I, you know, decided to take that big leap of faith and transfer. That was before this transfer rule. So I had to go ask my coaches for a release. I had to have those hard face-to-face conversations and really, you know, figure out and reflect within and figure out if that's really what I wanted to do. You know, what was I going to do if I left a place like Stanford? And, you know, I had to battle a lot of things personally, just in letting go of what other people think, to make that decision. And I knew I was looking at wrestling schools. I was looking at Ohio State, Penn State, Iowa, and Lehigh. Those were the 4 schools I was looking at.
Yep.
And Ohio State, just culturally, when I visited there, it was amazing. I'd always liked Ohio State. I had a good relationship with Kyle Snyder, Miles Martin, and I that was the place I wanted to go. I wanted to go try to beat Penn State. Didn't happen in my career, but I wouldn't change anything about it. I loved my time with the Buckeyes, and they welcomed me with open arms.
For sure. And speaking of taking a leap of faith, I know you're a Christian, and I know you're active about your faith and you're vocal about it. When did you start to develop your faith, and how has that impacted your career? And, kind of curious about how it impacted your career from a decision standpoint. When you maybe, I know in business I lean on my faith all the time for what I'm going to potentially do next and decisions. And I know it kind of gets me from highs to lows and lows to highs. How did that impact your career, both young and then through college, as you're making these tough decisions, like leaving Jersey to go to California, leaving California to go to Ohio State? Like, what was that like?
Yeah. Growing up, I always believed in God, and, I feel like growing up, I kind of went through now looking back, I'd say I went through the motions. I always believed in God. I prayed when things got hard, but that was kind of it. And when I was at Stanford going through this whole process, things were just tough. And then, when I finally decided to go to Ohio State, I was like, man, I knew I was going to a place where culturally, Coach Ryan, guys like Kyle, they're very open about their faith, and I knew it was something that I would explore more. So when I got to Ohio State, I'd say is where my new walk really started. And I just learned a lot. I had great fellowship, started going to Athletes in Action, talking to guys like Tervel, Kyle, Nate, Coach Ryan, guys that were a little stronger and more mature in their faith than I was. I started seeing things, seeing differences about these guys and the way they competed, things Tervel would talk about on the mental aspect of wrestling. And, I felt that presence in my life. And, looking back, I truly feel like God called me to Ohio State. I think that's why he called me there, so I could get to know his son, Jesus, and really start exploring that. And, my junior year, it started taking away a lot of stress, a lot of anxieties when I could go out there and compete. I still had those butterflies in my stomach, but they'd go away a little sooner than they used to. And I really felt like I could be a little more free out there because, when it comes down to it, I can only control. Tervel used to say you got to control the controllables, and everything else you got to just let God take care of. And the controllables really are our preparation, our attitude, and our effort. And I repeatedly tell myself that even up to this point in my career, especially now that I've felt it, I've felt that stress and anxiety come off before I step on the mat. I've felt, I've had the ability to just shoot more. A lot of guys, there's a lot of guys out there that, say, man, I have that like performance anxiety. I shoot so much in practice. I go out there, I don't take one shot, and I think my faith really helped me let go of some of those things. And, even before every match, I just say, you'll take care of the results, but let me just control my attitude and my effort. And as long as I give 100% in those things, I can't be, I gave it all. And, a good story, not story, but thing I have to say about that is just, my nationals, my finals appearance this year. Of course it stings. They always do. I'm not saying you don't feel that sting. It doesn't hurt to lose. We're all human. We're all competitive. But, I had a lot of, what's the word I'm looking for? Just not relief, but
adversity.
Just after I lost that match, the outcome was the way it was. And I had given all my attitude, all my effort to that match. My preparation was top notch going in. And when it's all said and done, I lost. But, I was proud of the way I competed. I was proud of the way I represented myself, the way I represented God. And that's what it's about. I'm not going to be able to take these wins and losses with me. But what I can do is impact others and, make a difference on people and have people question, what's different about that guy? Why is he like that? How does he have how does he have that outlook? What allows him to compete freely like that? What allows him to just go out there and keep slinging shots? What allows him to get knocked on his butt and get right back up? And wrestling teaches us that in general, just because of the nature of the sport. But I think, the faith side of things is where, I feel like I've really jumped up to the next level. Because I had a lot more contentment, a lot more peace when I walk out on the mat, because wrestling's wrestling. It's my life at the moment, but it's not what's going to define me overall. So.
Totally. And I'm assuming too, like, your career has had so many ups and downs, like so many in the sport. Last year you lost at the last chance qualifier, didn't even get to the team trials, and you experienced such a low there, and then you have such a high where, you avenge a loss to Yanni, you upset him, people don't see that coming. Like, there's such highs and lows all within 1 year. Is that how you've been able to find some consistency and balance in navigating those ups and downs?
For sure. There's a lot of things that go into things like that. And yeah, it stunk. I had seeded third at the US Open back in May, or April, whenever it was, losing the pre-quarters, then losing the rounds of 12, don't make shot, go to last chance, lose again to Dean Heil for the second week in a row. But, the way I took it was, hey, man, like, you gotta be thankful for what you've been blessed with up to this point. And, this is where you reflect. And that's where, like you were saying, that's where that prayer came in. I knew I started looking at I had already been looking at other RTCs, but, there's just a lot of things that can cloud our minds in this world and really distract us from the things that are most important. So because I didn't make trials, I was like, hey, look, I didn't make trials. I guess I'm not meant to be there this year, but I still know I know in my heart that I'm one of the best wrestlers in the weight. I was in Final X last year. That didn't deter me from anything just because I didn't make the trials. And I think it was exactly what I needed to reset myself going into the Olympic year. I had just finished up a 4-year college wrestling career, and it was time to I needed to figure out this transition into this next role as an RTC athlete. And, that's exactly what I look back on this as. It was a way for me to reset my mind and learn about kind of who I was, what I'm looking, what's the plan for the next stage in life. And, I really prayed on it, prayed on these decisions. And, God calls us to be our best self, to try to live like Christ and, just keep refining. And that wrestling is that. We keep refining every single day. We'll never be perfect. We always have adjustments to make. So I took it as the opportunity to keep refining, figuring out what I needed to do next, and to totally just reset my mind before the Olympic year. And like I said, the belief was always there. I had the belief in myself, even when I lost that match to Dean Heil and walked off the mat like, dang, I'm not going to trials. I was like, hey, this is a chance to spend time with your family. This is a chance to kind of reassess, figure out what the next move is. And here I am. I think it was, again, a great blessing, and I didn't take it hard. You know, you got to take everything for face value, I feel like. You can't look into it too much, especially with a loss like that. You know, losses like that in general. You know, even this past weekend, you know, I had a great tournament, didn't finish up the way I wanted, still competed very well. Again, showed that I'm right there. And but you know what? It wasn't about winning that tournament. The goal was to go there and qualify for the trials. That's done, and back to the refining process.
Yeah, and a few kind of questions off of that. You know, speaking of moving to the Penn RTC, what has that been like? You know, I know from a Christian standpoint, I know Brandon Slay is a man of God, and I know he's very vocal and active in his faith too. What has it been like to not only move to the Penn RTC and kind of have a fresh start, like no more folk style, no more college classes. It's a complete new start from, you know, Ohio to Philadelphia. What has that been like so far?
It's been great. Coach Slay is a great mentor, great coach. And, you know, I have everything I need down there. Philly's a great place. My sister we actually live together down in Philadelphia. It's closer to home. I got great training partners, a chance to kind of help build the program. And, you know, like I said, in this time before I chose that, I started figuring out that, you know, the RTC athlete life is different than the college athlete life. You know, this is now, I don't have to go to class. I don't have to do these things. I don't have to work out before 9 a.m. You know, like
right. It's a completely
different world. I have more freedom to take care of the things that I need to. You know, I can put this time, effort, and energy into my body, into recovering, into making sure I'm getting the right sleep. And I've taken those things very seriously. And I think, you know, being down there has helped that. You know, I'm on a new lifting program. You know, I wrestle this many days a week. You know, I take off this many days a week. Because that rest and recovery is just as important as the time you put on the mat, you know. And what I figured out is, because as an RTC athlete now, I'm training less, but the minutes that I put in are more valuable. They're more quality minutes. Every minute that I do have in the room, I have my full focus and attention there. You know, I feel like sometimes as wrestlers, we get caught in the motion of just going through the motions and being that cog in the wheel. But, you know, when you're really looking to refine every single day, you got to find those things, you know, even when you don't feel like going in. You find that one thing that you are going to try to get better at. You know, we're all wrestlers, we're all human. There are always some days where we don't want to go in the wrestling room, but we got to. And it's finding the joy in those little things, like, all right, hey, maybe I don't want to be here fully doing this, but, you know, maybe I can really work on, this new little hand fighting thing I'm working on, or really just hammering down something. And I feel like that's what I've learned through this process, getting those quality minutes that when I am in there, in the room, I'm being deliberate, I'm being intentional, and everything has a purpose. You know, and I think that's the biggest change I've seen, I feel like.
And what's the self-awareness levels like? You know, I feel like it's, when you have ups and downs, it takes a lot of self-awareness and takes a lot of reflection to kind of keep yourself grounded and to know where you have to kind of let it go and say, okay, I wasn't meant to be at the trials this year, and not get down on yourself. And then there's times where it's like, okay, I should have won this match. I should have done this. What is that self-awareness process like? And is it because of who you surround yourself with? Is it how you were raised? Is it a combination of everything? Like, what's that self-awareness level like to now know 65 kilo is arguably the toughest weight class in the country? Like, they're all tough, but this weight class is no joke. And you're right there. Like, the only guy who wasn't there this weekend is Zane. Aside from that, everybody pretty much was there that's going to be a contender for the Olympic team, and you were the runner-up. Like, you're right there. How do you now take that and kind of have that time of self-awareness to figure out what adjustments you need to make to complete the job and make the team?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's all those things. In terms of the technical things, it's going to be my coaches, who I'm surrounding myself with, how we're, what kind of game plan and what things we're going to figure out to combat those things. I got to avenge a few matches, but guess what? I'm going to have those same matches again in 4 months. So I can't overlook that. It's not like, oh, hey, I beat him, we're good. It's like, no, we still got to get better.
Right.
We got to figure out how I'm not going to get turned, how I'm going to, get to these positions that I need to get to, how I'm going to prevent him from getting to these positions that he got to. So on the wrestling side of things, it's who I'm surrounding myself with. On the other side of things, I mean, I like to consider myself a high-level thinker, so I always just try to keep a very, just objective view of it all. I try not to get too caught up in those little things that do drive us crazy. And I'm not saying I don't, I don't think about those things, but when I do, I try to just navigate it to that bigger scale and the end goal. Even when I look back, right, it's like, man, I lost that match. I lost 10-0, man. Like, I had a great tournament up to that point, didn't finish the way I wanted. But, hey, the goal wasn't, yes, of course I want to win, but the goal was to come here and qualify. Now I have that stress off. Now it's those adjustments that need to make. It's taking that, like, higher level look and really being like, all right, all in all, what needs to be done? And what was done. So what was done was qualifying for the trial, avenging a few losses that, felt good for me. But, how am I going to continue to get better to, continue to glorify God in the way that I know how? And right now that's wrestling. I feel like, when I'm out, how am I going to get rid of those little stress things that I feel going into the matches? It's all of it. But when it comes down to, I think my face is a big reason why I'm able to look at all these things the way I am. 'Cause like I said a little bit earlier, wrestling's wrestling, and I'm not going to be able to take that with me. But it's all these little lessons that I'm learning throughout the process. Those are the things that are going to continue on past the wrestling mat in, 5 years down the line. And for right now, again, taking them and applying them through that wrestling lens, because that's my life at the moment.
And speaking of, like, how it's going to impact you in the future, like, I mean, I can speak to that for the longest time because I only wrestled in JV and in varsity in high school, and the past 12 years running multiple companies, I can speak for days to how much wrestling has done for me. And you don't really know it in the process when you're that young. And I think it's a little bit different now. I mean, you're older than a high schooler, and you have a bit more self-awareness for how the world works. And I know that you have business aspirations and you have other things you want to do post-wrestling. How much time do you spend kind of planning for that, preparing for that, or haven't you really started that yet?
So Coach Slay always says, we do the natural and then let God take care of the supernatural. So the natural for us is, right, we create these plans, we create these things that we want to do. But ultimately, when it's all said and done, whatever is in God's will is what's going to happen. And, I have plans, after when my wrestling career is over, I want to go get an MBA. I have business aspirations and I want to do that, but I try to keep a loose hand on all those things. I have these ideas because those are the ways that those are my little measures of how I'm going to get better, how I'm going to kind of keep progressing, keep growing. So that's like what I think about. But, if my heart gets changed along the process, then it does. People ask me if I want to coach wrestling. At this time, I don't. But if my heart changed and when it's all said and done in 5 or 6 years, even if I go get an MBA and next thing you know, I want to coach wrestling, I'm going to coach wrestling. I truly want to just do whatever is best for me and whatever I feel led to do. And so my plan, like I said, is to try to. I have these business aspirations, and I just want to.
Is there anything specific you want to do business, or do you just kind of want to be in business? I'm just curious.
So I've had a little bit of experience with construction management, but I'm not married. I'm not married to anything. I don't have any. When I was out at Stanford, all those people were techie, so I wasn't very techie.
Right.
I wasn't a computer science major, coding. A lot of respect for those guys. That stuff is awesome and it's next level in the future. But whatever kind of opportunities come along, I just want to continue to grow and become better and impact people, and whatever business route that may be, where I'm going to be able to impact people the most, is exactly what I want to do.
Yeah, and I think you said it perfectly. I think no matter what, because you're so focused right now on competing and winning an Olympic and a world championship, your heart is going to change, and God molds our hearts into things through the process. And I'm always curious because I know some people have just different desires, and God takes those desires and sometimes he amplifies them, sometimes he minimizes them, sometimes something crazy happens in our lives that transitions us to focus on something else. But it's cool too to have that confidence in the back of your mind and your heart that God can still change your heart. Maybe you will become a coach. You don't know. It's one of those things that you're constantly evolving both your desires, and then as you're growing and developing through everything you're doing, there's so many possibilities and what could be
exactly.
Next.
And I mean, you said it best. That's exactly it. I know in the back of my mind that as long as I'm pursuing, as long as I'm making God the center of my life every day, and that's true and genuine, then I think no matter what, I'm going to be led to do what I'm meant to do, and yeah. Whatever that is, that's going to be.
Right. And I don't know if we're allowed to talk about this yet, but I guess we can, because how much trouble can I get in? But I know you're now on board with us at ScrapLife, which is super cool. And, one of the things I think is so interesting about brands and wrestling especially is it's such a small community, and you can leverage being with different companies to see what opportunities pop up. I'm close with Don, and I got involved with ScrapLife personally because when Don owned Flips Wrestling and Flips Wrestling sponsored Burroughs told Don and Rocco Mansueto at the time, dude, Justin Bash and Bash Solutions need to build your website. They're the best. So I got hooked up with Don just to say, hey, Flips Wrestling needs a website. All right, we'll help you. We became good friends, and then that turned into being business partners. And I would have never thought I'd be involved on a partner level of an apparel company.
Yeah.
But this sport being so tight-knit gives you those opportunities. And I'm excited to see, what happens in the next 3 to 5 years, both within ScrapLife and what happens, where this can go. I mean, I think there's so many little niches within wrestling, and I think we're seeing that with the different buckets in the country, where you have so much going on in Pennsylvania, in Jersey, in Ohio, on the West Coast, and you have these different worlds where I forgot who I was talking to, maybe Ashnault, where it's like, yeah, it was him. Because I'm like, dude, in Jersey, you're a legend, but then you can go to somewhere else and nobody even knows who you are. And it's the same with like Burroughs. Like Burroughs goes to Iran and they're trying to tackle him in the streets. They're so excited to see him and get an autograph. Then he flies home, walks through the airport like he's a high school kid, you know? And it's like, there's so much opportunity within those little niches. And I'm excited to see what happens with your career and ScrapLife on the mat. I think there's a lot of fun stuff coming up.
Yeah, me too. I mean, first off, I'm really excited about that. You know, it's been a long time coming. You know, but I believe in it. The gear is the best. The joggers are the best. I got to wear, you know, a pair of the prototype shoes this past weekend. They felt great. So I'm really excited about those and what those are going to look like for us and the team. And, you know, like you said, you know, so we don't know what's going to happen, but all we can focus on is, you know, trying to have a better product, trying to represent ourselves in the right way. And, yeah, I'm real excited for this journey.
And when you talk too about, like, I'll try not to go off on a tangent here, let you go here in a minute, but, you know, when you talk about leaving a lasting impact, it's funny how different that looks too, because, like, as ScrapLife gets ready to launch a shoe in Q1 here, like, you're in on that ground journey, and you're giving feedback on the shoe, and you're wrestling in it. You know, aside from Nolf with the Bill Farrell, I think you have more matches in the shoe now than anybody from an actual competition standpoint. And when you talk about like lasting legacy and lasting impressions, and like that's huge. Like to be able to be on the ground floor of something like that and tell people like, I contributed to this. I wasn't just a paid athlete. I wasn't somebody who was just paid to put a logo on a shirt. Like that's cool. And that's something, you know, not everybody gets to say. But I think it's also even cooler when you get to be a part of the development of it, and you get to be a part of the, you know, the next 5 years of what happens with the shoe, to be and be such a part of that early story, I think is not only a blessing, but it's something not a lot of people get to do.
Yeah,
really.
I agree. I mean, and like you said, back to what you were saying about just the opportunities that it opens up. I mean, you know, yes, I now have an apparel company behind me, but I want to help that business grow, and whatever I can do to kind of, you know, add value to that process, I'm going to do. And, you know, I feel like I can add a lot of value to that. So it's going to be fun. You know, we got a lot of great wrestling minds behind it. You know, ScrapLife and Rudis are currently the two heavy hitters, I feel like. And, you know, they're both new up and coming companies, and, you know, we have a lot of room to grow. I think we're just kind of tapping into it now too.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, I'm biased, you know, obviously, but I think the quality we put behind the ScrapLife gear is just like, you know, it's all I wear. I mean, when I got my company closed, because, you know, running Bash Solutions, like I got to go to meetings and stuff. So my hack was I had Bash Solutions joggers made and Bash Solutions infrared. And I go meet with clients in Bash Solutions joggers and Bash Solutions infrared. Like once you wear that stuff, you get used to wearing it. Man, it's hard. Like I know I got to go get ready for church here in a few hours for Christmas Eve, and it's like I just want to wear joggers and a twist hoodie or something.
Exactly.
But yeah, man, it's exciting. I'm really pumped for what's going to happen with ScrapLife, and again with your career. And do you know now, like leading up to the trials, do you have plans for where you're competing next and what's coming up next in the short term?
So I'm hoping to go on an overseas tour here in January. I'm trying to work out the details on where that's going to be. But, you know, just, again, keep on refining. I want to get some foreign field, get some competition against some international guys. I think that's really important in this Olympic year. And then, yeah, like I said, every day in practice, continuing to make the necessary adjustments and figure it out. when it's all said and done at Olympic trials, there's going to be 7 to 8 guys in the weight. And it's going to take a good, a hard day or two of wrestling and, smart wrestling. And so every day up until that point is going to be geared towards getting better and figuring that out. And, like I said, got that competition in January, hopefully compete again, maybe a February, March, before Olympic trials, just so I'm continually getting better, getting tested, and, wrestling those top guys.
And, dude, every day is so important. I mean, I looked yesterday, and as of yesterday, we were 103, so now 102 days out. Like, that time is going to fly by, dude. Like, it feels like I just met my wife yesterday, and that was, 2 years ago.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, in 100 days, the Olympic trials are, and it's like, man, you do, and it goes back to you talking about, every minute is such a quality minute. And being able to focus on whatever you're doing, whether it's on the mat, off the mat, with your diet, with your faith, with whatever, having that quality time where those minutes you're putting in are as quality as they can be. Because, man, before we know it, April 4th will be here.
Real soon.
Yeah, for sure. All right, man. Well, listen, I know you're busy. I know you're getting ready for Christmas Eve and Christmas, even though it doesn't look like Christmas outside or feel like Christmas, but Christmas is tomorrow. So thank you for making some time to stop by the show, and congrats on a good weekend, man. I look forward to what's next.
Thanks for having me. It's great chatting.
Great chatting with you, Joey. And that is how we will end today's show. Guys, girls, if you haven't subscribed, go ahead and subscribe to the podcast. Leave a 5-star review. Send me feedback. Connect with me on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, wherever. And we'll be back soon with another episode. See ya.
And the beat goes on.